Now, hello everyone, welcome back to the channel, G-Man Aviation. Now in today's video, we are back in the flight simulator today, checking out these kind of fan planes that are a little smaller. Some would call them not like very plane-like. They're almost a mix between a helicopter and an actual plane. So, looking around, you'll see the big engine on the back, which is kind of your propeller or your fan that sits behind you, which will propel this little bike-like thing forward. Now you can see in the flight simulator this is shown as an experimental plane, obviously like something someone would build, and you can also see this thing has a parachute on it that will actually take us up into the sky. Now otherwise parts of this kind of look like a bike. The front wheel tires, you can see these actual disc brakes here as they roll, as well as our tail number here, and this kind of just engine on the back. Now, we are at a little heliport. Obviously, not many real planes or helicopters. Unless they're a helicopter, they really can't fly here. But we can see that this plane will definitely be able to take off at just that tiny little bit of distance. Now, it doesn't seem like our camera app is loading for some reason, so we can't go to the external camera like I was going to. But some might recognize from the way this is looking that we are in California. San Francisco, actually. And you can see over there is the city of San Francisco as well as the Golden Gate Bridge, which we're going to fly around today in this little fan plane and see if we can really view it. We can see we have a tower over here and this little house in this helipad. Now we are on a hill, so if I release the brakes, you'll see we'll start rolling. You'll also see that this little handbrake is how we stop, so very much like a bike. So let's go start up the plane. We'll turn the batteries on here with my little yoke buttons here. We'll turn on our lights, and that will have this little thing blinking, or at least it should. Maybe when the engine starts, that will turn on. And I can then turn the little key switch on my yoke to both of our magnetos are on, and we can then start the plane. Now this does look, there you go. Very, very simple plane. We can then run up the engine here, get us out of this backwards fall that we're in. Now you can already see that our parachute tried to go off there as we start moving. Now our engine is running at about 2,000 RPM as we are running here. And also that it does look very, very simple for this engine information system. Now, otherwise, this is our kind of center yoke thing. You can see that it controls the side-to-side movement of the plane. So this is all used by strings that kind of pull this front wing-like thing. So let's get into it and already take off here, and we'll check out the beautiful skies of San Francisco. Let's get into it. So here we are, we're going to go for a takeoff here, throttling up here with the side, all the way up to full power. We'll release our brake, and you'll see our parachute will kind of go up here, and I will pull up on the yoke, and you can see already, just like that, we have taken off. Now, obviously it would be loud if you were just sitting here in this little bike plane, but you can see the beauty, honestly. There aren't any kind of frame that you have to look around. Obviously no windows, so probably on a more windy day you wouldn't be flying this, but you will see these around. I know where I live I have seen them around in some points, and they have different ways of kind of doing this. You'll see all types of these kind of fan parts. Sometimes it's just like a fan strapped to like a chair. I've seen those before. This one's obviously a little more built that has actual landing gear. But this little top parachute thing is kind of how we control it. Now this is obviously nice because it's honestly considered kind of like a VTOL plane. Obviously you need some runway to get moving, but it's not much, as you'll just take off pretty much from there. So we took off from a helipad back there. Is the closest little heliport that is closest to the Golden Gate Bridge. Now, you can see that we are going right now 42 knots. Now that is overspeeding the airframe of this little plane here. This plane says that it cruises around 30 knots. Now, obviously, you can see we also have a kilometers per hour indication down here in our knots. You guys might not be able to see it because of my face, but the airspeed indicator right now shows knots and kilometers per hour. Otherwise, obviously, this is be considered a very light plane. No jet engines, not really even a propeller. Obviously, it does have a propeller, but it's more of like a fan, where it is pushing the air out instead of actually processing and using the air intakes. Now we're going to fly over to the Golden Gate Bridge here and kind of sightsee, do a little bit of sightseeing. So let's fly over to the Golden Gate Bridge and see how it looks from this little fan plane. So here we are, we have approached the Golden Gate Bridge. Now we are going to kind of fly over it here. And again, with this, how this plane is, it's very nice to kind of look out of. Good for sightseeing, obviously. Now it would be harder to go long distances in this plane. I have seen like the X-Cub as a good, if you want a little more of a more powerful plane, as a good sightseeing plane, because that's also a pretty limited airframe, but that can definitely go a lot faster than 37 knots. Now, kind of circling around the Golden Gate Bridge here, you can see the beauty that it looks, definitely in the flight simulator, how it's modeled. You can see this is definitely one of the more detailed models in the flight simulator, and you can also see our beautiful little shadow down there as our little kind of parachute has the big block on the sun. Now currently we are at 900 feet. Obviously we're not going to much higher than this, but we can just honestly fly over the little Golden Gate Bridge here, or the big Golden Gate Bridge, compared to our little plane, and continue doing some sightseeing. Now we're going to go over there to the Bay Bridge and see how that looks, of course, in our little fan plane. So we're going to fly over there and see how that looks from the sky. So now here we are approaching the Bay Bridge here. Again, it actually kind of looks like the Golden Gate Bridge in the Microsoft Flight Simulator, but a very nice silver color. And we can view it from up here in the skies again, from these beautiful kind of sightseeing plane. Now obviously you probably wouldn't have as much ability to just fly around like this. You would definitely still have to file flight plans with the FAA, actually get a plane that is safe, and also be able to endure winds up here. Obviously you can't do this every day. Definitely if it's not suitable for this parachute, because this pretty much is the only way we are flying here. So it is a very interesting plane. You'll see people on it in real life, and I definitely think it is a cool way of just, even if it's just transportation or sightseeing, where you can see very up close to different types of sightseeing. Now obviously these probably aren't the most safe. This probably will not be winning any fight with the ground or another aircraft, or even maybe a bird if this was collided with. But I definitely do think it has a cool way to just look around and see the beauty of a city, or a beauty of like a park, or the world, obviously, as you go around. Now, I did see on the way from the Golden Gate Bridge over here that there was a ship with a heliport, or a helipad. Now, I'm going to go try to land on that, because obviously we only have 15% of our fuel left. We will be falling out of the sky shortly when our engine dies. So let's go back over there and see if we can land on that helipad. Let's fly over there. We can take one last look at the city of San Francisco, and we will fly back over to that heliport. Let's try it. So just a little update. The ship that we were going to go land on is right there, and we have officially run out of fuel, even though the flight simulator claims that we have 4% of fuel left. You can see our engine has died here, so obviously, if you were flying one of these planes, you would definitely want to actually take into account the amount of fuel you have, make sure you can actually get to your destination, because right now we are only cruising at about 13 knots, as our fan kind of just slowly brings us into the ground. But since we are in the flight simulator, we're just going to pause time really quick and get a nice little fuel fill up. Definitely not the most realistic, and that is definitely the way we could kind of get out of this situation. So obviously in real life you would actually know how much fuel you have. So let's get fueled up and actually try to go land on this airship. Let's test it out. Now, one interesting thing I was learning when refueling this plane is that this plane only, or this engine, only has a 5-gallon fuel tank. Now, we are filled back up to 100% because we are in the flight simulator and we have no consequences of our fuel actions. But you can see we can now make it over to the ship. But definitely 5 gallons cannot take you very far. Definitely if you're running at full engine power the whole time. Now, obviously, if you're not really trying to get anywhere, you wouldn't be running at full engine power. This is probably one of the longest trips that a plane like this would take from all the way around. But it is easy to land this thing if you had to just fill it up with you. If you keep a can of gas with you. Maybe not the safest idea, but I don't know how people who actually fly these planes do it. How they plan for the refueling. Definitely you can't refuel mid-air, you have to land, but interesting if you're actually taking this for transportation. Now, as you saw when we were out of fuel, now this ship is going to start moving on us. That's fun. When we had the fuel emergency, we were able to slow down to 14 knots. Now, that's kind of going to be my plan for landing on this ship here, is trying to just catch up to it, even though it's going to just take out one of its fellow ship friends. Not very nice. But we're going to just try to go as slow as humanly possible and just land on this little helipad here. Pretty much stall out the plane. I say stall, but this plane doesn't have wings, so that is not really an aerodynamic stall. It would just be a floating down to the ground type thing. Now, obviously, this is harder on a ship that's moving. I'm pretty sure the ship is making it harder for us on purpose. It wants to see us suffer. So here we come into the helipad. When we come in, we'll just hit the brakes. Oh, not really. Okay. We've been duped by the ship. Push down pretty much as hard as possible. Definitely harder when your ship is moving. Let's try another attempt in here at landing. Try to get down immediately so I can just slam the brakes. Oh, we're so close. Keep on attempting here. Wonder how many attempts this will take me. Oh, there we go. We almost made it. That was almost the last attempt. Now, I don't know how this ship decides to get under the Golden Gate Bridge, because obviously the Golden Gate Bridge is not a drawbridge. And there we go. We almost landed. I do believe that this ship does not like to be landed on, because we did stop there. The ship is just moving at a speed that I think is a little crazy. That is purposefully meant so you can't land on it, unless you're really a helicopter. So we could try one more time, but it does seem like this is a more of an impossible landing situation. Definitely when our lovely ship is moving. We do get some good views of the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm pretty much out of attempts here with this very funny ship here that definitely will not be able to fit under the Golden Gate Bridge. Oh, and also do not know what the heck just happened with that. I don't know what we're doing. I believe it may have collided with the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, and that's not how bridges work, but thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed and have kind of learned how these little planes work. Obviously, it's not too complicated. We're just going to ignore the ship that's just phased through the Golden Gate Bridge. Obviously, because of the flight simulator, we have no casualties. The bridge is still standing. But I think that it is an interesting way for more people to get engaged with aviation, because obviously it is easier to build a plane like this than a ship that you kind of just, or an aircraft that you have to build with actual wings. Obviously, you have to learn a little more about aerodynamics. when really you could get just like a kit plane like this and be able to fly around like the actual planes do. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and have a great day.